Good afternoon, John and Paul. Thank you so much for putting some time in to have a talk today about men's health. And what I'd like to do is just to do a little round of introductions, and we'll get going with some really important questions. And I don't know if you've ever done this before, but today I searched for men's health on Google, and I think I got about 58 hits on the news section. I Googled in the news section menopause, and there was over 500,000 hits in the news section. So there's not many people out there currently talking about men's health. And, I'm hoping this is something that we can explore together and to better understand why are men not as good as women as really creating movements to improve their health and well-being as well. So thanks for joining us today, John. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly, Emily. Yeah, so I'm John Simons. I'm based up in the north of the country, not as far north as you guys, but still classed as the north, up near Liverpool. And I'm currently running a company called First to Mind. So I work as a therapist for individuals and also support leadership teams in wellbeing initiatives. But I'm also a clinical supervisor as well, mental health first aid trainer, and hopefully soon to be suicide first aid trainer as well. So yeah, just added that string to my bow. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Wonderful, thank you. And we're joined by Paul Bannister from ManHealth. Paul?
Thanks, Emily. My name's Paul Bannister. I'm the founder and director of ManHealth. We've been running now for 6 years. We run talking therapy groups across the north of England. We have a web chat and connect service, and we deliver training around men's health inequalities to businesses across the country.
Brilliant. And I'm Emily Pearson from Our Minds Work. We exist to create mentally healthy workplaces that thrive, and men's health is definitely on our agenda at the moment, as we've just partnered with ManHealth and designed a brand new program for the workplace called the Ambassador Program, which aims to improve workplaces' mental health and well-being specifically for men. So we've got some questions that I wanted to get you talking about today that I think are going to be really interesting for people. So this first question, we hear it all the time, don't we? Men don't talk. Is this a myth, or are men just not talking? Like I've just mentioned there around the Google search, there is no big movement for men's health, even though it is Men's Health Week next week. What is it that's going on when it comes to men talking about their health and well-being? Is it a myth, or do men talk? John, this was one of your points. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I guess I have a bit of a challenging view on this, and I'm waiting for Paul to come in and beat me down on it. But I believe men are trying to talk. I believe men are very keen to talk. I think what we are missing, to get to the crux of it, is we're missing the listening skills. And I think men will attempt to talk, and then when that falls on, for want of a better phrase, deaf ears, they don't talk again. And I think that's what we're seeing. That's what men are feeling. Not listened to, not heard. I think there's a lot of problem solving going on rather than active listening. And certainly from a therapeutic perspective, the active listening is where we're missing the trick. That is what would support men, give them the confidence, I guess, to continue to talk about it. And you've touched on it there. There's no massive movement. Well, if people aren't feeling heard, then they're not going to create a movement, are they? Because they feel in a minority or feel dismissed or diminished, and problems can be reduced and simplified, and then they're expected to go away. I would challenge this idea of man up and big boys don't cry. I think we've all heard that now. And I think we get that. And I've experienced men crying, and I've experienced people breaking down and talking to me in all sorts of contexts and in all sorts of environments. So I think we need to move past it. And I think it's a really easy sticking point. I think it's a really good hook for us to hang our caps on. and say men don't talk. There we go. So let's just pack up and go home. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, John. I would agree entirely with you. In fact, yeah, I think it really annoys me. Tell you what annoys me, and again, not want to be controversial. I can't stand these campaigns that say "speak up," "shout up" if you need a hand. Encouraging men to speak out. Men are speaking out. You're exactly right. You're just not. First of all, they haven't got the skills. They're not articulate enough to be able to really engage in conversation.
Yeah.
But there's no spaces for them. There's nowhere for them to go to and be listened to. They can't do it with their friends, or very rare they can do it with their friends because of the culture in this country around banter and taking the mickey out of people. They find that very, very hard. And then if they're in sports clubs, again, a lot of men are in sports clubs, go to gyms. They find it very, very hard. They need to find a safe space where someone's going to invest time and give them that opportunity to be listened to. And until we start creating spaces like that and allowing men to be heard, so flipping the whole Men Speak Out campaign on its head. I mean, our tagline is time to listen. We need exactly what you said. We need to teach more people to actively listening to men's concerns.
Yeah.
And they have to be persistent and they have to be consistent as well when they're listening. Because, as I say, men culturally aren't equipped in this country with the language to be able to do it, and they find it really, really hard to do. So they need to be given that time and that safe, non-judgmental space. So I would agree entirely with you, John, what you're saying there. They will talk, but they need to be given the right time and space.
I have a bit of a question then, just off the back of what you've mentioned there. And we say men, what we mean is many men. It's the bell curve, the majority of men.
Yeah.
When it comes to this persistence and consistency and that providing that safe space, do you think that many men are worried about confidentiality? And if I do speak to somebody, that it isn't going to be confidential?
Well, I'm not. I don't think it's a big consideration for them. I think the biggest consideration is not being listened to, and then not getting the response they would hope to get. I guess that was the biggest comment. I mean, our spaces are confidential. We always start our meetings by saying what you hear here stays here, and that's the foundation of everything that we do. But I think with men, they are worried. They're just worried that, like John said, they're worried that what they're going to say is going to fall on deaf ears, and there's going to be no follow up, and then it serves no purpose. So I don't think confidentiality is an issue as such. John?
I would agree with you, Paul. Again, but again, so is that perhaps the context in which we are listening? Is that down to you and I? Are we preaching from the altar, as it were, or whatever the saying is? In that we are creating those confidential environments, and we are creating environments in which people are feeling listened to. But yeah, I mean, lack of confidentiality, I guess, within the sports environment or club environment, or the gang of lads going out. I guess that might be. We do see things being leaked on social media, and so I don't know how confident men would feel about sharing things on social media through, or rather than the spoken word, direct face to face. So there could be something in that down the social media routes, but certainly in the context in which I'm engaging with men and seeing men engage in conversation with others, there's no fear of confidentiality, I wouldn't say.
No, the fear lies in the stigma, doesn't it, John?
Yeah.
I think the fear lies in the stigma of being belittled for how they're feeling. And that's where the stigma lies. And we really bad in our society at belittling people's feelings and people's concerns, and that's the biggest concern for men, I think.
I'm showing my age a bit here, but I'm sure we can all recall the comedy effect that was from Gaza, crying on the pitch, and that just ran and ran and ran. And in that emotional environment, what was that all about? Why was that necessary to pick that out and exaggerate it and run with it? So I guess that does feed into your confidentiality element.
Well, adversely, there was when Gaza had his breakdown countless times when he's been, with his various conditions, belittled in the media, seen in in his scruffy attire and looking worse for wear, and drawing the attention, not to help him, not to support him, just to belittle him for, it's.
So, with that in mind, you're talking about stigma there. Obviously, I'm not a man, and I'm wondering, from a male perspective, this male-specific stigma that men experience because of our societal, social norms, this masculinity norm that men feel as if they have to uphold. Do you think that's a lot of that stigma is actually internalized, self-stigma, and is just as much of a barrier to prevent them talking because they are thinking themselves that I'm weak and I'm no good, or because I have a mental health problem, I'm useless, and really internalizing some of that?
I would say yes, and I would go as far to run with that and think about this idea of is it that role model then? So the idea of feeling useless, the idea of feeling like a burden, and we're all aware that those are the words that then start putting red flags up for people who might be having suicidal thoughts. So and that can be really triggering for some men, and I guess it touches on the consequences of those conversations as well. So when if a male is having that conversation in a healthcare environment, are they then expecting a different reaction? Because we've been very clear, I think, in some of the suicide campaigns around almost targeting men. So has that created some sort of stigma? I don't know. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Emily said about the internal stigma. It's still men. It's really difficult for men to it's an internal pressure on themselves by admitting, in many cases, the guys who come to our groups that they've got a problem. That's the hardest thing they have to do. It's the hardest thing they've ever done in their lives in many cases, and they find it really, really hard. We always say to our guys, the hardest thing is coming through that door for the first meeting and opening up. That's the hardest thing. And the only thing that's been preventing them coming is themselves. So and they're worried that how they'll be viewed by the friends, by the family, by the wider community. It's that stigma is definitely internalized. Yeah.
And I do see that echoed in their approach towards therapy as well, in that men, I've had a couple of instances where it's the female in the man's life that has instigated that contact with me, and I won't then see somebody based on that. I have conversations with the male, obviously, but the initial contact has been, that barrier has been broken down with the significant female in their life before they've actually taken that step to come and see a counsellor.
Yeah, I think I've had 4 phone calls today from 2 mothers and two sisters, trying to get their men to come to our service, and I just say to them in the kindest possible way, the man has got to engage with us. It's because if they don't want to engage with our service, and your service will be the same, John, then they've got to admit to themselves that they need that support, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective as well, I get some really profound moments from my husband. I use my husband a lot. It's a good job he doesn't pay any attention to LinkedIn, because I think he'd be like, oh my God, he knows that I use some of these insights because they are quite profound sometimes. And one that always sticks in my mind, and I really kind of feel like sometimes these messages that we put out there with these campaigns, you know, are not particularly helpful for many men as well. So the, you know, the big boys do cry kind of messages. There are actually many men out there that don't cry, and because of men's biology as well, and the way that their tear ducts are, and the chemicals that they have inside of their brain and bodies, means that they are less likely than women to cry. We know that estrogen stimulates lots of tears as well, as women know. We know this. And my husband, ex-military, from Zimbabwe, so obviously he's been brought up in a very, very different culture to the UK, which, you know, is more kind of I don't even know the word for it, but they're very much more kind of the woman has probably about 2 decades what it was like in the UK a couple of decades ago, a little bit behind us when it comes to the roles of men and women. And I've never seen him cry in the whole 5 years that we've been together. And I remember watching this film documentary once, and it was really upsetting. I was sat there, tears streaming down my face, and I just looked at him and I was like, why are you not upset by that? And this is what he said, and it was really, really profound for me. He said, Emily, just because I'm not visibly showing it doesn't mean I'm not feeling it inside. And for me, that was like quite a profound moment, because I really realized in that moment that this is a lot of this unvoiced and undisplayed emotion that we see from men. It can be that hardwired that there is like no emotion at all. So we then think that men aren't emotional. They don't feel those emotions.
Yeah.
And exactly what you said there, Paul, that lack of ability to express emotions as well.
Yeah.
So when we don't see things, you know, we're very good at thinking then they're not there.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself. I find it very, very hard. I can't recall the last time I cried. I really can't. I mean, when my dad died 8-9 years ago, I was absolutely devastated. But I wanted to cry. I thought to myself, I should be crying here, but I didn't cry. I couldn't make myself cry. So but it doesn't mean I was any less upset.
Yes,
But it's expressing and showing that emotion. But I think we condition, John, aren't we? We condition not to show, because it's again from the schoolyard. We condition not to show any emotion or any weakness, because it's deemed a weakness.
Well, if you think how we learn language and how we move through our lives, and so we become more articulate as we get older, and you know, we have a range of vocabulary there for us to use, but that has always been restricted for the male and continues to be restricted for the male. And I see and hear phrases, you know, like angry. How you feel? I need to come and see somebody because I need to control my anger. 99% of the time, they're not anger issues. They're frustration. They're feeling betrayed. They're feeling diminished. They're feeling a whole range of things. But anger is just the go-to, and that's because the emotional literacy has been so restricted. But we don't educate males in that. I think we're getting there now, and I think certainly in some of the corporate work I've done, I've seen areas of younger generation coming through. They are more emotionally literate, but that then creates difficulty with the older leaders who don't have that vocabulary. So then you get the communication conflicts there, because the leaders aren't capable of having those conversations with the younger ones. I can't really say, my wife will listen to this, and I can't really say I don't cry. I cry at AA adverts and things like, you know, when the dad goes and picks the girl up because her car's broken down and stuff like that. I'll get emotional at that kind of stuff. Britain's Got Talent, you know, it's pride is my thing. Where as soon as I feel a stab of pride, then the tears come out like nobody's business. So
yeah, I can relate to that.
So I have another question, because I think this is something that is really, really an important point to discuss when it comes to when men do ask for help and they are ready to engage in recovery from poor mental health. The services that are available tend to be very female-led. And John, obviously, you are a man in a predominantly female profession with a predominantly female client base, so you see this yourself. Again, that treatment and therapy that you've got to be sat face to face, directly, just talking about emotions and feelings. Yeah. Really, really difficult for men to do, and we see that in the statistics that there is a very, very small percentage of men that actually access talking therapies in comparison to women. You know, I'd love to hear a little bit of insight from your perspective in that profession and what you're seeing.
So yeah, I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, and I think that's the road for us to go down. This idea of the talking therapy for men, and we've just spoken of it there about how some men are emotionally illiterate and struggle. So therefore, it then naturally falls, doesn't it? How would you expect a male to cope within a talking therapy environment? How are they going to be able to express themselves and feel heard? There is a lot of pressure sat in that room, and I don't want to sidestep the male in a female world dominated world of therapy, but going down the other avenue first, I think one of the best things I've seen is the walk and talk, and getting out and talking, running therapy, so going out for a run with people, and I did get, and I have had predominantly males taking me up on the walk and talk therapy, so just getting out. And I think it's that lack of intensity, that the idea that we're actually side by side with each other rather than sat stereotypical 45-degree therapy room, so that we're not opposing each other, but they are more comfortable in that external environment. And it also seems to be the talking and the therapy needs to be a byproduct. So if we're playing snooker, that's great. If we're playing darts, whatever. If we're running, you know, we're on stand-up paddle boards, whatever. I will do whatever it takes to get a man to have the conversation with me, to get a man to come and break down what his emotions are and where he's going with them. But there's a lot of work there to be done around exploring those emotions, because there's almost a psychoeducation piece going on first, in how to express that, and the other range of the emotions like I touched on before. So what is anger? Where is that feeling being felt, and what does that actually mean? What is it that's being recalled with that emotion, rather than just pure anger as we'd see it as in aggression? I think looking at the male in the predominantly female world, I currently work with one team. There's 16 of us on the team, and I'm the only male. Currently just finished a cohort at college, training a cohort at college, and we're looking slightly better there. We got like 33% male, 66% female. So how many of those males will then continue through the profession? I don't know. You know, I can't foresee that, obviously, but what I do know is that 3 teams I've been involved with now, I've been the only male on a female team of therapists. So unfortunately, that's the reality of what it's like out there at the moment.
Yeah, you see that a lot, definitely. And I think, you know, you picked up on some really important ways of engaging you know, many men into into treatment and therapy, and being able to talk about things by it being less direct, and also by being engaged in more of a physical activity, something that's more of a distraction that can be done at the same time. And, you know, again, my husband, another bit of insight. You know, a lot of guys are really practical, anyway, you know, they're brought up like that, aren't they? You building things from a very, very early age, where the little girls are looking after the babies and playing in the kitchens. And I remember a couple of years ago, my cat died, and we brought him home from the vets, and I was stood in the kitchen crying my eyes out over my cat, and my husband was outside with the shovel digging the hole. And you know, again, totally practical, just dealing with what needed to be done in a really practical way, and wasn't in the kitchen crying with me over this cat. So, you know, again, it's about understanding what men want and how men want to be engaged. And obviously it's going to be unique for every man, because every man is different, but many men, I can imagine, are quite similar to my husband. It's about, you know, what is it practically that I can do, having a practical achievement. And you know, sometimes from talk and therapies, you don't get practical achievements. You know, those achievements that you can receive from therapy are much kind of lower level stuff, rather than I've done a task and I've achieved something, which I think, you know, can be, you know, a very positive way forward to engage men in these types of therapies. But the NHS are not doing that. They're not looking for other ways to engage men in treatment and therapies. And the same with physical health as well, Paul. You know, it's Men's Health Week, so it's not just about mental health, it's also about physical health as well. And women are brought up at a very, very early age to know that they have to go for regular smears, which are not nice. You know, they're not nice for anyone, but men don't have that level of health interventions kind of drilled into them at an early age, or even at all. I don't even think you can get like an MOT check from the doctors until you're about 40, 50-year-old. Is that right?
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah. Couple of things there, me, I'd like to come back on. First of all, I can't think of anything worse than sitting in a therapy room talking one-to-one to a man face to face, or lying on a couch, however they do it these days.
Give me a ring, Paul.
Sorry,
You've
John?
been watching
Give me
too
a
many
ring.
films
I
like
just can't. I don't feel comfortable with it. I really don't feel comfortable with it.
No.
And I don't want to do it. I've tried it. Wasn't for me. But you know, going back to the walking, getting out and walking with someone in a wood or in a forest. Yeah, I can talk all day, and I really will open up then. So I think there's some real value in that. I think we do need to do a lot more work around that. And the other thing, Emily, was about services. I mean, many of the guys we come into contact with are ringing us when they're in crisis. I mean, we get referrals from we're a non-professional service, John, and we get referrals from the local crisis team. But many guys are reaching out to us when they're in a real crisis, and we can't really help them when they're in a real crisis. They want at that point, they want to be sport. They want help straight away. Immediately, they want help. And we can't provide them with that. You know, I always say to the guys, look, how long is it taking you to become this unwell? And they'll say, oh, been like this 20, 30 years. Yet you want to come to one ManHealth meeting, and all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm well again. It's an unrealistic expectation on a lot of the guys.
Yeah.
But we do other things, Emily, as you know. We do walks with the guys. We've done paddleboarding with the guys last year, and it's a great way of getting them to open up and chat. I wish we could do more of it. I really do. But as I said, we so far away from being able to do that. I mean, all NHS services that I know, John, only work office hours, don't they?
Yep.
So again, a barrier to men. You know, one of the reasons we set up our groups 6 to 8 on evenings is because it seemed to me that every service that is available to help people closes at half 4 or 5 o'clock, and there's nothing when when most men who are working most of the time, most of the guys who come to our groups are in jobs, full-time jobs, find it very, very difficult to reach out. So we've got an awful long way to go in this country, and I can't, you know, and to address men's health and men's mental health. Another point you made, Emily, about men's health week next week. I've had loads of conversations with businesses, and every one of them is about mental health for next week. Can you do some training on mental health? You know, it's become men's mental health week. It's men's health week. You know what I mean? There's other huge problems around men's health in this country. Heart disease, prostate cancer, lung cancer, bowel cancer are all killing many more men than suicide is. So they all need to be addressed in Men's Health Week, you know, as to, you know, all the other ailments as well. But yeah, we have a long way to go. And you may be able to tell, John, that I'm very frustrated with the state of this country in terms of looking after our sons and brothers and fathers. It really frustrates me. We're not doing anywhere near enough.
Absolutely. I would be useless at my role if I couldn't tell that from the video and the voice. So absolutely. And again, I would agree, you know, there's very little out there and very little available to people. And you know, the illnesses that you've listed there, absolutely crucial. And there's preemptive checks that can be done. And why aren't we signing? Why aren't we signing up for them? There's a little bit of a confession in there, but I'm going to gloss over that. So, but again, one of the things that I do every single time with every single client is just, let's address sleep as well. You know, this is, it lowers your resilience. It lowers your physical health resilience. Why are we not approaching this as well? You know, it's fundamental to sustaining or thriving in life. But we don't address it. We've still got this very much, you know, I can survive on 3 hours sleep, mate. You absolutely cannot. And that needs to stop, and that culture needs to stop. But perhaps sleep is another time. Let's address the physical aspects,
well,
like you said, Paul.
You could go down that, John, diet as well. Huge
100%
issue. Yeah.
Yep.
So there's loads we need to do better. Loads.
So I'm going to come back to my question of what we started just before we end this session. Google 58 hits for Men's Health Week in the news section, and over 500,000 for menopause in the health section. What can we do? What can we do to really we need to make a movement.
We do.
How do we do that?
I asked a question in one of our groups last week. I said to the guys in the group, I had 20 guys there, and I said, name me a good role model, male role model, who you'd look up to and you admire, who models good behavior in terms of mental and physical health. You know, I got Tyson Fury came up a couple of times. Well, we know Tyson's got his own struggles with mental and physical health. And he ballooned to 30 stone nearly between bouts, didn't he? So, and that was it. That was the only name that came out. So who have we got out there championing men's health? Who is there? John, I can't think of, John, you said you were Liverpool with Jurgen Klopp, I would guess. I don't know a great deal about him, but to me, he seems a decent man.
Yeah.
But who else? Who else is there?
I would agree again, Paul. I think we're seriously limited, and I've never spoken to the individual. I would dearly love to speak to the individual. But Jason Fox, for me, stands out. His book Battle Scars is an absolutely fabulous read. Really full, frank confession about the mental health struggles that he'd had. And unlike some of his peer group, he hasn't shot off at a tangent. I've never heard him yet extol the virtues of excessive drinking. I think there's an understanding there that's detrimental to health and physical health as well as mental health for him. So, but again, how shocking is that? The two of us are sat here, two men, not excluding you, Emily, but two men who would I aspire my son to be like? Shocking, isn't it? That I can't think of somebody.
Just someone who's constantly. I mean, there's lots of women I could think of who are out there who are modeling good behavior. Some not so good, but in terms of physical and mental health. But there's no men. There's no real men who our men can look at and say, look, he's looking after himself. He's looking after his, he's looking after his physical and his mental health. He's a great role model. And we need to embed these role models throughout our industry, throughout our teaching profession, throughout our society, because there isn't anybody that I would think, yeah, he's setting the standard there for what men should be doing. There isn't. I can't think of anybody.
But also then shouting out for other men to follow suit, isn't it? And I think that's the thing. And
I say Tyson Fury. Tyson's
does
doing
do
some
that.
great things.
Absolutely.
But as I say, he's had his own struggles, which he's confessed. But we need more people encouraging people to speak up, and encouraging, not to speak up, encouraging men to go and be somewhere where they can be listened to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today, gentlemen. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope we can keep this conversation going throughout Men's Health Week and beyond. And let's make a movement. Let's get as many people as we can involved and be ambassadors and look at how we can improve men's health together. Thank you.